Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our regular Sueur City Council meeting dated December 12, 2022. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Council members, you were all presented with the agenda earlier or late last week. You've had a little opportunity to look it over. At this time, I will entertain any motions. Mr. Roby's got a little change to the agenda. You want to announce that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. You'll notice in front of you an updated agenda, including item 8K. So any motion to approve the agenda would ask to include item 8K.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda, adding 8K.
Motion made by Councilmember Schluter.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Swanberg. Any other discussion, comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, at which point the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. Mr. Roby, at this time, I might ask that you review the consent agenda with us, if you would, please.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. On this evening's consent agenda, the consent agenda that was provided to council included item C. We needed to make some updates to that item C, and so I would ask any motion to consider adoption of the consent agenda be so made without item C. Item A in tonight's consent agenda is approval of the city council minutes from the November 28th, 2022 regular city council meeting. Item B, approved disbursements through December 12th, today, 2022. Included in those disbursements are 4 items over $25,000. The first is a payment of $572,152.09 to MMPA for November 2022 hour. Second, to Magni Construction, payment application number 15 for number 8 for Well House for $142,215.04. Third, to Minnesota Department of Revenue for November 2022 city sales tax for $43,256. And finally, to Landmark Structures, payment application number 15 for the composite elevated water tower for $34,295. Item C being stricken from the consent agenda. Item D, approved payment application number 15 for Well House and well number 8. Item E, payment application number 15 for composite elevated water tower. And F, approved surplus property declaration for IT equipment that's no longer utilized and the city wishes to approve surplus.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Any questions for City Administrator Roby? If not, I will consider a motion to accept the consent agenda minus item 4C.
So moved.
I'll move Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. Public comment provides an opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Persons wishing to make comments must sign up in advance on a sheet provided by the council and provide us with your name and address if they would, please. At this time, do we have anybody? We have nobody here to share any public comment.
No, but they're all here. I got it.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the city administrator update. Mr. Roby, if you want to share what you'd like to share with us at this time, that'd be good.
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few things. We've got a big agenda in front of the council tonight, so I'll keep it relatively brief. To date, the EDA the EDA housing study RFP, which was issued a couple of weeks ago. We've received over 15 requests for the full RFP, so I'm encouraged on the response we're getting so far for that. Not so much a council update, but a council update on the EDA's business. The rec facility master plan survey has gone out. We've gotten a strong response so far from the community. I'm really pleased with the responses we've gotten so far. As of 2 weeks ago, we were at 282 responses. So within 2 weeks of issuance, 282 responses. I was pleased with that, and there is still some time to complete that survey. So just a reminder to the public, you can pick up paper copies at City Hall, at the Community Center, or go online. The phone system, just a quick housekeeping item. The phone system within the city was updated last year and to a new service. With that came some challenges around forwarding and auto attendance and all the fancy stuff that phone systems can do now. So coming in the next couple of weeks, you'll notice when you call the main City Hall number 6401, you won't automatically get an individual. You will get an auto attendant, which will allow you to more quickly direct yourself to report a power outage, get to the police department, talk to someone in utility billing, those things. The city phone system used to be set up that way. It went away last fall, and we've been working to get it back. Airport Commission meeting last week. I don't want to steal Councilmember Crookman's thunder if he's going to update the council on that. But good discussion at the Airport Commission last week. Personnel and Budget Committee met last week to discuss a number of items which you'll see later on tonight in your agenda. Planning Commission was scheduled to have a meeting last night. Apologies again to Councilmember Krogman, who's probably going to mention this. But Planning Commission met last week. We did not have a quorum for that meeting, so we didn't formally meet. It was a gathering of Planning Commission members. And to really just discuss the status of Ordinance 596 and what Council's action was at its last meeting and waiting the first reading, and what action will be in front of Council tonight regarding that same ordinance. Today, Finance Director Graff and I participated in a kickoff for the long-term financial plan with our financial consultants at Abdo. Really excited to get that process going, really combining all of our rate studies, long-term capital plans, future developments into one master document. So that'll be kicked off today, and the bulk of the work in Director Graff's court during basketball season. I guess it's kind of funny. So apologies to Director Graff. Will be in the next 4 weeks, where they take a whole lot of data that we already have at our fingertips and start to compile it into a living document that we can use long-term to help with our long-term debt management. And finally, this Thursday, 11:30 to 1 p.m., we will be closing City Hall while we have an employee recognition lunch at the Pizza Ranch to honor those who have served us, the service anniversaries at the city. And any council members who would like to attend, as long as it's considered a casual social meeting, shouldn't have any open meeting law concerns. So 11:30 to 1, if you're interested in stopping by and saying thank you to those who have put in a number of years of service here at the city.
This Thursday or?
This Thursday, the 15th.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Appreciate your update. With that, we will move on to item 7, public hearing. At this time, we will, this is going to be the truth taxation public hearing 2023 general fund and levy budget. This time, we will ask, yeah, why don't you walk us through it, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, so annually, the city, like all municipalities, is required to conduct a truth and taxation hearing where we discuss and present the proposed 2023 budget and property tax levy. The process for this is consistent with prior years. Finance Director Graff will make a presentation on the proposed budget and levy. Following, council members can certainly ask questions during the presentation. Then following the presentation, then we would ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Should the public hearing be opened, we do have a list of individuals who would like to speak at that public hearing. Council will hear and then record the public comment from the public during the hearing. Once all individuals who have signed up have spoken at the hearing, we'll look for a motion from City Council to close the public hearing, and then the council will proceed to agenda item 8A, where they will consider adoption of the general fund levy and budget, which will include a council discussion on that agenda item.
Thank you. With that, we will then invite our finance director, Mr. Graff, up to give his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and members of the general public. Here tonight to just go over truth and taxation, the 2023 general fund levy and budget. So back in June and July of this year, city staff began compiling the 2023 budget. Then in August of 2022, we had our first meeting with Personnel and Budget Committee to review the 2023 budget. That was the first of 7 public meetings that we had. On September 12th is when we met and City Council approved the preliminary levy and budget. And then we're here tonight to review and comment and discuss and approve the final levy and budget. And then we do need to certify that levy and budget to the Sueur County and to the state by December 30th. In summary, the 2023 proposed levy is just over $3.5 million, which is an increase of a little over $400,000 from the 2022 levy. We'll go in detail those numbers in the next few slides. The recommendation tonight would be to have a motion to approve resolution R 2022-054 to adopt the 2023 final budget. Just an overview, like I mentioned before, Budget Committee kicked off back in August. Met 7 times. The levy, preliminary levy that was approved was 16.82% back in September. We are not allowed to raise that any amount. We can only reduce that. And you'll see tonight it has been reduced a little over $118,000 from what was approved in the prelim levy. Some major considerations that are going on this year that are impacting the levy. We have a significant increase in our public safety investments. We're dealing with inflationary trends that are almost 8% over the past year. We've had significant county property valuation changes, shifting burdens to residential properties. The funding that we do get from local government aid just was an immaterial increase this year. And then we're also continuing to fund our capital budget to avoid deviating for the street maintenance repair. And just for reference, as we go through some of these slides, 1% tax levy change is equivalent to about $31,000. Here is just a 1-page summary of our 2023 levy. You can see at the start at the bottom, you can see the $404,000 increase that equates to a 13.01% increase in the levy that we mentioned on the prior slides. To break that down, the base levy is made up of 4 main components. The general levy, which is going up $422,000. That is mainly driven by a few things. One is ARPA funding due to COVID that was received in 2022 that is not being budgeted for in 2023 or expected to be received. We had about $140,000 impact for investments into the police department. That is kind of a combination of 2 things. One, moving to a full-time police force, and then also it's reflective of the union wage increase that was approved earlier this year. Our Highway 169 abatement is going down $65,000 to a new agreement, spreading that payment over a few more years. And then we're also dropping our capital levy from $700,000 to $590,000. And that change year over year is driven mainly by street and sidewalk maintenance. Our EDA levy is up $12,000 or 18%. And then the next section is our debt levy. As you can see, there are about 8 different bonds that we have currently. Total payments summing about $776,000 this year, which is essentially flat from the prior year. So those are the main components. I skipped over. I'm sorry, the community center, which is up about $138,000. The drivers there are increasing wages to our part-time lifeguards. We have health insurance impacts that are actually impacting both the general levy and community center. In total, that's going to be $85,000-$90,000. And then we are experiencing major increases in utilities, specifically to the community center. That's probably about $50,000 there. This next chart here is just a look at the tax capacity trends. This relates back to the prior comment of the shift in the valuation of property by the county. You can see to the far right, highlighted in red, that is the tax capacity numbers for this year. You can see that commercial industrial is 1.25, and residential is 2.67. We'll show some more details on following slides here to kind of highlight these impacts. Right here, there's a couple of pie charts here. The first one to the left is back for the tax payable year of 2017. You can see at the tax capacity, the residential component was about 43%. And now if we fast forward 6 years to this current budget season here, the tax capacity in 2023, residential is making up about 62%. And you can see that most of that shift comes from the commercial and industrial segment, where it's gone from 42% to 29%. So this is an impact to what you'll see on your property tax statements here, this shift here. This is another comparison, the levy comparison and the tax capacity combined here. You can see they are generally following the same trend. The bar graphs there are the levy. If we just start on the right, you can see that it's up to the $3.5 million line, which is our levy amount this year. And then the line graph above that just reflects the overall tax capacity for the city. And just the key changes here, which we have kind of just highlighted through this year: the increase in public safety expenditures, the police department, the increases that we're seeing in our public health insurance, utilities and supplies. There's contingency set in the budget at $75,000, which is less than has been in the budget in the past few years. The revenues, the LGA is just a small increase of about $20,000. That's on roughly 1.05 million, so a very small increase to our LGA funding. And then the loss of the ARPA funding, or the COVID relief that we received in 2022 that we are no longer receiving. These next couple of charts are just a summary of our revenues. You can see the first line is the property taxes. That $422,000 increase was the same number that was shown on one of the previous charts. The intergovernmental line going down, that is where the loss of the ARPA funding is, and then the rest are fairly smaller increases or smaller dollars. This here is the same general fund expenditures by year. Looking here, you can see the big changes there are in the police department, which is the increase in going to a full-time police department and the increase in the union wages this year. That is the big driver on this chart. The increases to city administrative and accounting can be tied to the new finance position that was added. And also services to AFDO for some of our long-term planning and audit preparation services. And this is just a pie chart of those expenditures on the prior slide. I'm just trying to highlight where the bulk of our spending comes from. And you can see that between police and street department, that's getting close to 70% of our total expenditures. And that's all I had for this part of the hearing.
Anybody have any questions for our finance director, Mr. Graffmore, or city administrator, Mr. Roby?
I have one real quickly, just I think a clarification. I'm aware of the figure, but I think it'd be good to state it for the council and the public. Talk about increase we've had in insurance costs. What is that? It's a pretty significant amount.
Yes, the increase that we saw was from our public employees insurance. Overall, the rates increased this year 42%. And what we've done here is the assumptions here are we did pass 10% of that on to city staff. And then the remaining was left to go into the levy, which the average then makes that about 47%.
What was it the year before? What was the percentage for employees? Was it the same, roughly 10%?
It was, go ahead.
So just for clarification, 10% of the increase was given to passed along to employees in premium increase.
10% of the increase?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
And just, if I may,
Yeah.
add one clarification on the health insurance. So at 42%, so the city of Sueur is in a 2-year contract with Public Employees Insurance Program for PEEP. 2-year contract, we are right in the middle of that contract, which terminates December 31st of 2023. Statutorily, so this is nothing we can directly control. Statutorily, there is no way for the city to get out of that contract unless the year-to-year increase exceeds 50%. That's language that we can speak to our local lawmakers about modifying, but at 42%, there's nothing we can do otherwise, other than breach the contract and risk being liable for paying those premiums, as well as the premiums for any insurance that we might move employees to.
Thank you. Anybody else? I just want to say, Mr. Graff, I want to thank you for all your help with the budget this year. It's been interesting working with you and Mr. Roby and the personnel and budget, and even the city council. I want to reiterate that we did have a workshop with the entire council, and we went over this budget as a group. Personnel and budget has met many times. Mr. Graff has kind of highlighted some of the challenges we've been going through as far as, delinquent abatement programs, the inflationary rates we're faced with, and a lot of the mandates we're facing through the state and federal government with the communication for our public safety. So these are some great challenges that we've worked through, and I just want to thank you guys for all your help, and I want to thank the council too. With that,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think there's one other thing that needs to be mentioned. If you would talk about the police radio communication system and streets and maintenance of streets, I believe it is. It's maintenance, correct, Joe? By the right term?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we'll probably touch on this a little bit more as we get to the capital plan. But essentially, we've applied for a grant for updating our police radios to, I think it's by 2024, that are required to be encrypted, which they currently are not. So we do have $100,000 set in the capital plan for these radios. If we were to receive that grant, then we could apply that money to further street improvements or to the radios if we do not receive that. But we'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we get to the capital plan slides.
Very good. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. This time, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, of course, we got to vote on that. Thank you. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, public hearing is now open. Do you have any order? Okay. Public hearing guidelines. If you wish to participate in public hearing, you must sign up prior to the commencement of the hearing. Negative remarks about city staff or officials is not allowed. You'll have a time limit of 5 minutes to comment. Disruptive or disorderly behavior will not be tolerated. The practice of the city council is not to respond directly to individuals providing comments at the public hearing. So at this time, we will start. We'll go in the order that's on the list here. And the first one is Mr. John. Help me with the last name. Haggett. Thank you. Welcome to the Sueur City Council meeting.
All right, first one. Well, so me and my wife and my kids have been here for 10 plus years, and all we've seen is positive in every way. So compliments to you guys and the ones before you. I think small town doing as best they can do. What I wanted to quick talk about. So I'm also a business owner here in town. So I get taxed a lot of different ends. So, not only is it real estate and sales tax and everything else, but that's a whole, we all are getting taxed, and I totally get it. And we've been lucky enough to live in a great neighborhood since we've been here. But the value, it seems like, is getting stretched a little bit here. And this is public record. So last year, my taxable market value of my house was $383,300. Beautiful home, nice neighborhood. This year, $474. Anybody here wants to buy it for $474 right now, I will sell it, and it'll move quick. What's happening is it's killing us. That raised my tax burden to $8,524 for City of Sueur. I can't hardly do this as I just started my business full time, and it's coming along, and I like Sueur a lot. Our daughter likes to go to school here, but it is pushing us out. My neighbors in the neighborhood feel the same way. I'm not going to speak for them, but we have conversations. We're both veterans, so I'm able to talk to them a little bit, and his are pretty high too. We have no problem paying our taxes when they're reasonable, and I know it's a tough job to try and balance these things, but that's a hell of a stretch for us. 85-24, and then to say my property went up almost 100,000. If I go on to Zillow right now, and I know there was a small period of time, 4 or 5 months, where the market was super hot, and I totally get that, but those days are gone, and I think we all can agree to that. It's going to be years before, who knows, this thing settles down, but our property's gone up every year, which is fine, but that amount just seems a lot for a family to bear. Neither one of us, well, my business is run out of Sueur. My wife, she works for the city of Mankato. And I don't want to move, and I'm not going to move until my daughter graduates here. But it certainly is pushing us out the door. So, I don't have a solution. That's what, I recognize some of your names because I filled in the oval for some of you. But I just want you to know it is painful. And just because we have a nice neighborhood doesn't mean that we can continually pay this kind of money. It's killing us. So 85-24 is where our taxes are going to be. It's an absolute killer, and still trying to figure out how we're going to be able to do it. It's going to work hard to do it, but on the bright side, I do love the direction that sewer is going. I think, especially with the streets, it's so noticeable. Main Street looks awesome. A lot of really good things, but we got to figure out how to probably get some increased revenue, not from the big green piece on the pie chart from the residents alone, which we do have a burden. We live here, we have city utilities, but you know, and you know, just for the record, I don't know how much time I got left, but my average city utility piece is over $500 a month. Plus I pay the 85/24. So, you know, I don't know, I don't have a solution other than, you know, I don't know if there's a way that we can reassess things, but I do need to talk to whoever I need to talk to maybe do a reassessment on my property. Just $100,000 almost in value is a little excessive. Like I said, more than happy to pay our fair share as a member of the community, but this is an increase that's going to be very painful for us. And, you know, we're all going to be suffering through the recession if it happens here coming up. We don't know for sure, but, you know, I wish us all the best, but just want to come out and state that. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons. Thank you for your comments and thank you for your compliments also. Moving on to Mr. Dana Allen. Welcome, Mr. Allen.
This is almost like Groundhog Day. I was the only one here last year. And I've been a resident of Sueur since 1981. This year, the 2023 proposed city level levy on my taxes is up 21%. That's double the inflation rate. A year ago, it went up 11%, which based on last year's inflation was about double last year's inflation. In previous years, the amount didn't go up enough to even to worry about it. I mean, a couple $100 a year, so, you know, like 5-6%. Inflation was 2, 3, 4%. Didn't make any difference really. But I think this one is a little bit too high. It would be interesting to know what our tax burden per $100,000 of taxable market value is in Sueur relative to Montgomery, Lee Center, Gaylord, all these towns that are reasonably our size. I mean, are we high price or low price? I have no idea. And I would guarantee that most of the people in town don't have any idea either. I hope you do. Then the last thing, I would say that if the budget projections keep coming in higher than inflation, and maybe each department be challenged with lowering their costs. In addition to that, the overall city management, I would guess, this is the way it worked in my business life. Overall city management would need to look at staffing levels, equipment procurement, the amount of equipment, and look at how does the city operate now and how could it operate at lower costs. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. This time we'll invite Mr. Mike Toohey up. Welcome, Mr. Toohey.
Thank you. I only have two things. Number one, as the budget was going through the calendar, August of 22, people started meeting, Not once on there, not once did I see anything that referenced a revenue forecast. Everybody gets one of those. Am I to assume that you guys generate a budget before you have any idea what you got coming in? Based on what I saw there, that would be the conclusion. Number two, the community center. 24% of the entire budget is being put to a facility that probably benefits 5 to 7% of the residents of this town. I'm willing to be challenged on that number, but I don't think it's 10%. I'm going to have a shot at this in a couple of months. I'm going to suggest that we look seriously at selling that facility for $1 with stipulations. to a YMCA, to a fitness chain. Something not unlike what happened with the hospital and the nursing home. I understand the angst, I understand the hand wringing, but it worked up there. Why wouldn't, and I don't know if it would, but gee whiz, folks, 25% of your entire spent budget on one facility makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tui. Moving on to Annette Rogers. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm your husband.
Are you guys, you're
Yeah,
going to
where's
speak
Jack?
together?
Yeah.
So we'll put you together. then, so. I won't reintroduce you, Mark. So,
Yeah, there was a lot of good things said up here, and I can agree with everybody, and I'm sure you guys live in homes that taxes are going up too. I don't understand how they negotiate these percentages, but mine is up 32%, and I can guarantee I don't live in a house nearly maybe the size of yours, because ours is very small. But as was said, we too cannot afford these taxes being raised as they are every year. And my property is not worth what we're being charged. And as far as the community center, I'm in agreement with that. There's not much use for the many residents here don't use that building. And it's kind of hard. I like living in this town.
Yep.
And I don't know, with all the break-ins and stuff that's going on, I see they've given the police department a quite substantial raise there, and how that's all, if they get new officers or whatever, but it's becoming unsafe in this town. And so, yeah, we're probably be looking at moving out of here too. So it's not sustainable for us any longer. So, thank you.
Thank you. Need your comments also. Mark, you didn't have anything else to add? You're good? Okay, thank you. With that, that completes our list. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the regular agenda. This time we will start with the R 2022-054 adoption of the final 2023 general fund budget and property tax levy. Mr. Roby, do you want to take us down that road?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this is this agenda item exists for the sole purpose of council considering the presentation that Mr. Graff gave. As this resolution here, much like in prior years, sets the budget for the general fund for 2023, and it sets the property tax levy as a component of that. The chart that's displayed here is exactly what Finance Director Graff shared previously. And I think he highlighted everything really well from a levy standpoint, breaking it down between general levy, which is general governmental operations, the community center specifically, the abatement fund, which we talked to council recently about, the capital levy itself, and Councilmember Krogman pointed out with Finance Director Graff's help that we're doing a little bit of contingency budgeting with the capital plan for street maintenance. Full funding, I shouldn't even say full funding, but $100,000 of funding for street maintenance would be provided in addition to what's in the proposed budget for capital, should the police department of public safety radios be funded via a grant, which unfortunately the feds have not updated us on yet. The debt levy is effectively flat year to year, the slight increase, and we are council is bound via the agreements of those debt issuances to pay those. And the only thing I would add here, and not in direct response to anyone or any comment or question in particular, but I would like to highlight one thing that Director Graff pointed out earlier around the share of the burden of the property tax bill and how materially that's changed in the last even 5 years. In the 6 years ago, when council was sitting in these same seats looking at this, commercial and industrial properties paid roughly the same share of the overall levy that residential properties pay. Residential covered maybe an extra 12% more than what commercial industrial properties do. Now, because of the valuations of the properties, which council has no control over, right? Council and city staff don't have any control over the valuations of properties. But given the market conditions of the last 6 years and what valuations at the county level have done, that roughly even share between commercial, industrial, and residential has turned into a situation where the residential property owners are now paying more than double their share, more than twice as much of the overall property tax levy than commercial industrial properties are, which is shocking, right? And it's, I'm feeling it as a taxpayer, and it explains a lot. I mean, certainly the proposed budget here is a 13% increase over prior years, and Mr. Graff did a great job explaining the reasons behind that change. But we're seeing a lot of people who, even at 13%, seeing tax bills increase at 20% or more, strictly because of how the county is assessing residential properties versus commercial industrial properties. Is there any other questions of council? Certainly able to answer. Mr. Graff is here. Public Services Director Chair is also here as well. But this is, unlike a lot of presentations, this is a one-slide presentation.
Mr. Councilmember Sullivan, you have a comment?
Joe, I don't know if you're the one to explain it or if Brian wants to take it on, but can we go a little more in depth into what going to a full-time police department's gonna do and why we're going that route, and giving a little more background around that specifically and where the cost is kind of questionable whether it's really an increase?
Yes, so no, that's a great question. So the city has historically employed a combination of full-time and part-time officers. And while all job markets have tightened up in the last 5 years, law enforcement has become particularly challenging to fill positions. For all municipalities, this is a nationwide problem. And in response to this challenge, City Council approved a marked increase in police wages with the last union contract earlier in 2022, which is effectively accounts for basically the entirety of the increase in public safety going into 2023. But that wasn't budgeted for, but given the market that we were in, cities, even large cities who can pay substantially more than we cannot find officers. And with part-time officers, the challenge has become even more problematic because there's a shortage of part-time officers to begin with, and part-time officers who you can get, they're getting 4, 5, 6, 7 job offers for full-time positions within 2 or 3 months of joining here. So what ends up happening is we take general levy budget dollars and we put $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 of training and extra staff time into a part-time trainee who might be a very skilled officer. By the time we sink $5,000 into them, they're gone. Get another full-time position, and we're back posting the position. And in the meantime, until we can find another part-time officer, we're paying all of our other officers overtime, which is not only a greater expense to the city, but also risks burning our officers out. And if we have officers leave, that compounds the problem. And so the proposal from from Chief Tiki initially, and this is a conversation that Aaron and I had dating back to May of this year, was looking at going to a full-time police force, where ultimately the costs to the city, both in real dollars and also in staff time and ultimately service to the community, are much greater. The costs are much greater. Trying to stay with a part-time, full-time combined model. The reality is that no matter how good a part-time officer is, they cost more money because they don't stay as long. And the level of service you get is, frankly, it's not there. You're a part-time officer, you come in, you're involved in a case, for example, a child protection case. You respond to that call, you do your report, and then you may be off working for one of 3 other different cities, or for a jail or prison for 2 to 3 weeks. Well, if our staff here who are doing investigations need to get a hold of that person, they're not our employee when they're gone. And we've had incidents where a judge has to attempt to change a court date because our part-time officer needs to testify in a case, and they're not available because they're not working for us. They're pulling other jobs, which creates a real public service challenge for us, which is, the goal of administration is to balance finance with service to the public. And here it's very clear that from a service to the public standpoint and from a hard dollars and cents standpoint, long-term, moving to a full-time officer and abandoning the part-time model is the path to success.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we will move on to the recommendation of the staff to approve the resolution R 2022-054 for the 2023 final general fund budget and the 2023 final property tax levy with a total amount of $3,510,607. I will be the first to make a motion to approve the levy.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Swanberg. Any other comments, concerns? Not.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. I think first, we have to realize that this is not the preliminary amount. This is what's being proposed now. So figures we've heard will be less, perhaps not substantially less, but will be less, to be clear. Secondly, this is the most difficult process, and I can assure you that personnel and budget, working with the staff, have looked at all the possible angles that we could think of to maintain the service to our citizens, to maintain public safety. You just heard a good explanation why we do that. And I would add to that that I am convinced that we're going to get a better police force, therefore better public safety in our community if we do this. We have very dedicated officers, our chief, but we need to support them. This is not easy to do. We're substantially reducing the amount in our street maintenance program. We should be spending nigh on to $800,000 a year to keep up with streets around here. And you total the figures we have in the budget for maintenance and for the actual putting in streets, we're not near that. We're doing the best we can. It's not easy, but I'm convinced that if we could find other ways, I would be in favor of it, but I don't know what they would be. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Furman. Again, this motion was made by myself and it was seconded by Councilmember Swanberg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to our 2022-053 adoption of the 2023 enterprise funds budgets and 2023 utility rates. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to invite Finance Director Graff back up here to the podium for round 2. So we just heard from Director Graff on the general fund budget and the general fund levy. The next component, as council does annually, is consider adoption of the 2023 enterprise fund budgets and utility rates. So just as for the benefit of the council and the public, enterprise funds are those funds that generate their own revenue. And in our case, or enough revenue to sustain their own operations. So that's our water fund, our electric fund, wastewater fund, stormwater fund, and refuse funds. This resolution in front of the council would adopt the 2023 budgets for each of those enterprise funds and the utility rates associated with those with each fund. So.
Welcome again, Director Graff.
All right, thank you, Administrator Roby. Okay, so the next few slides, they're just going over some of the rates that we have for the enterprise funds. These are the water rates for essential, non-essential, and the wastewater rates. You see by the different meter access fees and the usage rates per gallon. There will be a following slide, I think, at the end of this that kind of show the impacts to what we would call an average utility bill as well. That might make a little bit more sense. These next ones here are our electric rates for residential, small rural, and large rural, and broken out by the different rates that we have during the different seasons, June through September, and then October through May. Same thing here with general electric and large general, again broken out by season. Electric small industrial and electric for large industrial. You'll see for these electric, the rates are flat. For the water, they're up about 4.5%, which is consistent with the rate study plans that have been done in the past, and wastewater at 7.8% as well, which is again consistent with the rate study plans that we've had in place. Stormwater, this is up 15%. You can see here that the rates by acreage. Again, the 15% is to build up the stormwater fund that we hadn't had in the past. So trying to build that up. And the refuse rates, which is roughly, I think, about a 2.5% increase, which is essentially what waste management is passing on to us. These are the financial summaries for each of the enterprise funds. This first one here is the water fund summary. As mentioned before, it's a planned 4.5% rate increase. And I would just maybe direct your attention to the bottom right, where the second column from the right, where the net income loss without depreciation, we are cash flowing at about $36,000. And we are absorbing increased bond expense related to some newly issued debt there. The wastewater fund, again, at 7.8% rate increase. To the bottom right there, second from the right, you'll see here for the wastewater fund, it was short of cash flowing by about $150,000. And the electric fund, there are no rate increases planned for 2023. And this one is a positive cash flow of over $1 million for 2023. Stormwater fund is increasing 15%. Like I mentioned, it's increasing revenue as additional accounts are added. And we're increasing capital outlay as proactive stormwater management program moves forward. And the refuse fund, which is a 2.5% increase consistent with the waste management contract. And there is about a $27,000 cash flow in 2023. This chart here is just an overall utility bill comparing an average month year to year. So on the left, you can see the funds and the usage. The usage for water and wastewater is 5,000 gallons, which is close to average. The electric, 622 kilowatts is an average, and same thing with stormwater and refuse. You see the 2022 column there, the total of $259.10 in 2023 with the rate increases that we mentioned. That total goes up to $270.61, which is $11.51 per month, or a 4.4% increase. Now, one thing to notice with electric, we are not raising rates year to year, but the EAC adjustments will be passed through at plus 5% in 2023. So I don't know if there's any questions or comments on any of these utility charts from any council members in there.
Anybody have any questions, concerns? Mr.
I
Ryan?
do, real quickly, sorry again, it's me, but stormwater, Ryan and Joe, that was part of our plan. It looks like a high percentage, but it's a low amount to start with. But that was part of an overall plan that we've had for a number of years to incrementally increase stormwater fees. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct, and I'll just add one quick thing, which is that historically, as Director Grant mentioned, there was no stormwater fund up until just a few years ago. And the city, of course, as anyone who drives down our streets or walks down our streets knows, we maintain a significant stormwater system. And so any money, any dollars that were needed to maintain or upgrade that stormwater system were pulled through the levy and or water and wastewater rates, whoever happened to have the money at the time. So this is a better way to manage the stormwater system overall. Is to establish its own fund for it, raise some funds so that when we do street projects, for example, the stormwater fund can absorb some of the debt that's taken on for doing those projects. For example, South Main Street, which was just redone, the 2022A bonds, stormwater has a component of that. So stormwater revenues are going to help pay for the debt service there because the stormwater system was improved in that area of town previously. That costs would have been borne by another department.
My other comment or question concerns wastewater. We have a target, I believe, of 2026. And I'm going to use this term, perhaps it's not the most artful, but to catch up for debt service that was not paid in the past. And I think the public needs to understand that we're doing what needs to be done now because of what was not done in the past. And I would ask our finance director and city administrator to comment as they feel appropriate.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. So the wastewater treatment plant in particular, which was constructed back in 2006, 2007, carries a heavy debt load. When that plant was built, the city was part of Minnesota River Valley Public Utilities Commission. Since the dissolution of that commission, the city of Sueur now owns the responsibility for both the city of Sueur's and the cities of Henderson's debt service. Now, the city of Henderson pays the city of Sueur to treat their wastewater. Every month, the city of Sueur bills the city of Henderson, and we treat their wastewater. It comes to our plant. That plant, the debt is paid off in 2027, and that service alone is to the tune of $1.3 million a year, just for a bond payment for the water or wastewater treatment plant that we have. So it's a significant cost that the users of wastewater bear. Certainly, the treatment plant is doing what it needs to do. And it's maintained very, very well. The staff do a phenomenal job taking care of it. Of course, it's now 16 years old, so it, as you'll see in the capital improvement plan and the capital equipment plan, we need to put some money into it to fix things like blowers and things like that. But we will be servicing that debt through 2027, which is. We're looking forward to that year from a wastewater standpoint. But yes, the rate increases for wastewater are to build us out of the deficit with the wastewater fund that was established a number of years ago.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution R 2022-053, adopting the 2023 water, wastewater, electric, storm sewer, and refuse rates, and approve the 2023 budget for all enterprise funds.
Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Crowman.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Williams. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the adoption of the 2023 CIP and CEP. Mr. Roby, you want to review that with us, please?
I would, thank you. Director Graff and I had an arm wrestling match earlier today, or who best to present this, and I don't know if I won or lost. Here we are. So we referenced the capital improvement plan and capital equipment plan several times tonight, and these are dollars that are set aside, either levied or budgeted for specifically to spend on capital needs that the city has. And when I say the city, it's governmental operations, but it's also our enterprise funds and our utilities, which have substantial capital needs, as was just referenced in the wastewater fund. So every year, the city council is asked to adopt a plan for the following year's capital improvement plans. This doesn't absolutely, it's not a blank check for city staff to go out and do these things. Every payment, as all disbursements are approved by city council. But it does set a budget for what the capital needs are for the following year. I understand that no one can read this chart. And it's kind of, it's purposeful in a way, and for those who can't read it at all, it is, it's online, it is in the paper copy over there. This is, I tried to reorient it so people could read it, but it's gonna be impossible. But what this is right here, and I'll get you a cleaner version of it right here, which is a little bit easier to read. But what we have in front of us is the capital improvement projects and capital equipment plan for the general fund for 2023. The reason we can't see everything on this list is because it's rather long, and it represents items that were initially included on the capital request list. And to be clear, the capital request list that's put forth by staff, which is initially reviewed by the finance director and by me, is a list of what each department has already come up with for their capital needs that they have prioritized and put together on a master list. I would emphasize that these are needs, either from an improvement standpoint, a break fix standpoint, or they represent items that city council has previously approved as part of a plan and a master planning exercise, for example, that per that plan should be funded. And when we started back in July, our list was approximately $3.8 million in total capital needs. And that number is probably lower than it truly should be, because there were some items that were not included on the original list, but that were discussed at a staff level prior to that. But this was the initial list that we started with. Again, priorities that have been mentioned by council in the past are priorities that each of these departments have based upon serving the public. That list then comes, as I mentioned, to the finance director and to me. We start to prioritize, look at what was done previously, look at council priorities, look at the goals that council has set for the year, and further prioritize that list. By the time we first met with Personnel and Budget Committee, this $3.8 million was somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.1 million. Staff still recognized that that was likely too high a figure, given where the other expenses were coming in, given inflation, things like that. But really, the goal in personnel and budget is to vet each and every item on this capital list to get it down to, again, a level that balances what's necessary and affordable to provide service to the public. So the list that we have tonight for approval for the general fund capital plan is the list that's in front of us right now. This is materially similar to the capital list that was approved on the preliminary levy back in September. We have made some modifications. We've removed the ice arena coolant, as you can see on there, that's not being funded at all. And that's coolant that we need at the ice arena to, if we ever had a catastrophic leak or something, and need to continue to make ice. As Councilmember Krogman mentioned, and we've talked about earlier, the two biggest items on the annual street maintenance and then the wireless radio upgrade / street maintenance for the police. According to the street maintenance plan that was adopted by the city several years ago, that number for annual street maintenance should be somewhere north of $600,000 annually, upwards of $800,000 annually. The amount that was proposed in the preliminary levy was $375,000. And that, just to be clear, is divided between two things. One is the contracted work that the community sees in the summer, going out and fog chip sealing. They just did Plum Run last year and several other streets. And we have a long-term plan for that, for that maintenance, to make sure the streets don't fall into terrible disrepair. So a portion of that street maintenance goes to contract services to come in and do that work that the city cannot do for itself, because we don't have the equipment or the expertise. And then a portion of that is simply basic curb repairs, pothole repairs, frost boil repairs every spring. So that's asphalt, gravel, and materials to do basic upkeep on the streets. So between the preliminary levy and tonight, again, what we've done is we took $100,000 out of annual street maintenance because the federal government is requiring the police department to upgrade these radios. I heard from Senator Smith or Senator Klobuchar recently, but it's still sounding very promising that we'll get that money. And should we, then we would bring the capital plan, this plan, back to council and ask for a reallocation of this $100,000, likely to street maintenance, so that we can do a couple extra streets this year for repairs. But council can make that decision at the time. So this is, again, general fund, capital plan. Similarly, the enterprise funds have their own capital plans paid for using either cash out of those utility funds or through bonded projects. In 2023, between the, we don't do capital projects in refuse because refuse is simply a contract service with waste management. But for the 4 enterprise funds that where we do perform the work, we do perform capital upkeep. We're proposing $650,000 in cash projects between electric, water, and stormwater fund, and then proposed debt or bonded projects of $5.86 million between electric, wastewater, and water fund. A total capital burden plan of $6.5 million. And these are broken out here. They're also in the council packet and available to the public. Here's just a breakout of where those projects are in electric. Some continued funding of our underground maintenance materials, which of course have just gotten more expensive. A safety study, and then starting to look at North 4th Street electric improvement design. We have a potential project on North 4th Street. And for wastewater, again, wastewater, our long-term intention is to build that fund out of a deficit. So there's, the focus here is on bonded projects. And as you can see here, as we referenced earlier, a lot of maintenance that needs to be done with the wastewater treatment plant at 15 years of age. Water, some smaller projects, and we do have on here, we did have this on the budget for 2022 as well, but didn't materialize, was the high zone redundant water line, which makes up the vast majority of the overall enterprise fund capital plan. And that, for those who have been on council for more than a year or so, that's the redundant water line that would run up from, well, what had been planned to date was a redundant water line running up Forest Prairie on the south side of Cambria. So everything on the hilltop right now is serviced through a single water line, which runs up Doppy Lane. And from a security standpoint, utility security standpoint, consistency of service standpoint, the city had previously looked at doing a redundant water line up Forest Prairie. That is something still that the city staff have as a high priority and would like to look at in 2023. And stormwater, $50,000 in study dollars and in maintenance repairs. And then on North Main Street, we need to do a storm sewer assessment there. We know we have some issues. We had a collapsed storm sewer line on North Main between the Hometown Bank and Farmers Co-op a little over a year ago. So we know there's some issues there. We want to really get in and get in front of it because it's cheaper if we figure it out now and go in and try to fix it than if we have to fix it emergently. So the recommendation in front of council tonight is there's no resolution, it's just to approve the 2023 general fund and enterprise funds capital improvement, capital equipment plans as presented here. Take any questions.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Bill, you're reaching for your microphone.
No.
Okay. Mr. Roby just read the motion adopting the 2023 general fund and enterprise funds and capital improvement, capital equipment plans. I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Croman.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8D, approval of the city 2023 pay plan. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are two items on the agenda tonight regarding compensation for city staff. And the first of these is item 8D, which is the pay plan itself, which is effectively the pay scale for all city positions. Every single position at the city is scored independently based upon the level of responsibility it has. Once it's scored, they're grouped, scores are grouped into grades, and each grade is assigned a minimum and maximum. And if, for example, if we have a new position, we send that to a consultant to score that position so that we know we're doing it equitably and we're in the market. I'm going to score, which is assigned then a grade. And if it's a grade 6, for example, when offering a position to a new employee, a grade 6 position, the minimum for that offer for that position will be $47,227.03. The maximum will be $60,997.37. So each year the city looks at, or city council is recommended to look at the pay plan to see if the scale still fits the needs of the city. And last year, the city council made an adjustment of 5.5% upward in this scale. For 2023, the recommendation tonight is to increase that scale 5.25%, simply to allow the city to continue to recruit strong candidates for its positions. From a budgetary standpoint, this truly doesn't have an impact on the budget right now. I look at it as more of a recruitment and retention tool. If we have someone who's extremely qualified to come at a grade 9, they're getting offers out there in the market around $85,000. This puts the city in a position to be competitive in the job market. Again, the recommendation tonight is a motion approving the 2023 Sueur pay plan. take any questions.
Mr. Webber, thank you. I just want to reiterate, this doesn't have anything to do with the 2023 budget. It just gives you kind of a target, kind of a metrics on pay scales as far as the employees and current employees. Thank you. With that said, anybody else have any comments, concerns? If not, I will entertain a motion approving the 2023 City of Sueur pay plan as described.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Crowman. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8E, Performance Pay Policy Amendment 2023. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's a second item related to employee compensation that city council routinely looks at. At its same meeting, it holds its truth and taxation hearing, and that's amendments to the performance pay policy. Performance pay policy includes language around how the performance pay plan shall be run, managed, and implemented. This year, there were two key recommended modifications that have to the policy. The first of which is specifying the implementation of the policy by employment type. So currently, the city currently has 39 full-time positions who would participate in the performance pay plan. Of those 39 employees, 20 of them are union employees. Union employees are handled differently based on what their collective bargaining agreement states. So while they participate in the performance review process and get a score through the performance review process, any increases to their compensation are solely driven by their collective bargaining agreement and not by the table I have in front of you. For the other 19 employees of the city, they'll go through the performance review process, and their score alone solely dictates what's in this, is dictated by this table, excuse me. And so up to now, the policy does not delineate between non-union and union and suggests that all employees are subject to the pay table here and the salary increases that are included in it. That's not the case. Our unions have agreements for a reason. So that's the first change that's recommended, just to add some language on the union versus non-union. Secondly, as you recall last year, and it's in your memo, the scale of salary increases last year went from 0% for a score of 0 up to 2.99. Started at 3% increase with a score of 3 out of 5, and then moving up in 1% increments for every 0.25 increase in your performance score range. What we did this year is I have the salary increases. So instead of moving up 1% at a time, you move up 0.5%. So many of you will recall that last year's scale, and it's in the packet, went up to a max of 13% salary increase for anyone who received a 5 out of 5. I can tell you that it's extremely unlikely that anyone would ever receive a 5 out of 5, but it's still demonstrated that someone could receive a 13% increase. What's key in the performance pay policy, and it's specifically spelled out in there, is that the implementation of the policy is completely contingent on the department's budget. And the way that's implemented by managers is they score all of their employees, and then the system will tell you this is how much you have in your budget. You can allocate it however appropriate given their scores, but this is what your budget is. And we take those budget numbers based on what's approved tonight in the budget. So even if you score a 4.76, and according to this, you get 6.5 to 7% increase. If your budget doesn't allow for that, you will not get a 6.5 to 7% increase. You'll get a lower amount than that, contingent upon what your budget allows. that was a lot of talking. Are there any questions on the proposed pay table?
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. You've
Yeah,
simplified. Oh, go ahead.
I have one. Why is there a range in there? If you score between 3 to 3.25, why is it 3 to 3.5? Why isn't it just a set number?
That's a good question. So it could be a set number, but the problem is if it's, it makes it a little bit easier to differentiate between employees who maybe fall in a range, score range, then you can.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't say anything in the 3 to 3.25 is being super. That's being average. Let's be honest here. You're meeting expectations. You're average.
You think the matrix is too complicated, or?
I don't think it's too complicated. Philosophically, I'm against the whole thing. I appreciate that Joe has lowered this from 13 down to 7. It's still too much, in my opinion. It's way too much, and we just can't afford it at this time.
Well, and again, Joe, and you can reiterate on this if you wish, but this all has to be contingent on what's in that department's budget too. Does it not, Joe?
Correct. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So if that department's budget cannot, cannot handle a 6% raise, then it's just not going to happen. Correct?
That's correct.
What, do you have a recommendation, Mr. Swanberg?
I would do away with it, but if I was going to do it, the 3 to 3.25 would be 0.5%, and it would go up 0.5 right down there. It'd go from 0.5 to 1, 1 to 1.5, 1.5 to 2. I just, again, philosophically, I'm just not on board with this.
How do you?
I think we're paying very well, and I'm just not in favor of the performance pay, what I would call it bonus pay. I'm not.
I have a question for Joe or for Ryan. How does this relate to cost of living? Isn't cost of living built into this?
It is. So the city no longer offers
That's
a
right.
cost of living adjustment. So this effectively replaced any cost of living or bonus or increase in any way, shape, or form. It's all included in here now.
So if somebody's not meeting expectations, they don't even get COLA. They don't get their cost of living increase.
That's correct.
Well, every 2 years, we're redoing contracts, right? And these contracts aren't flat. I mean, they're not just holding the line. The contracts get increased every 2 years, right? They may not meet the cost of living, but not everyone's contract meets the cost of living.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, this is primarily the non-union employees.
Yep. So for union employees, where this.
I get it.
Yep. So where this has an impact on union employees is if they get under a 3, for example, in our local 49ers contract, there is a cost of living built into the contract. On top of the cost of living, if you score at or above a 3, you get about an additional 2%. That was 1% this year, is 2% next year. So next year, you'll get 3.5% COLA if you're a union member, 49er, 3.5% COLA. And if you get a 3 or above, you'll get an additional 2%. That's how the agreement's written.
How long has that been in their contract? Since this came into play for the non-union?
Yes, so there have been a number of discussions between the unions and my predecessor around incorporating performance pay into the contract, which, as you know, is not everyone agrees on how that should or shouldn't be built into a contract. But it's built into that extent. So there's a COLA that's negotiated. And then there is in the 49ers agreement specifically, there is a 1% this year and 2% next year increase on top of the COLA if they score at or above 3. And for non-union members, there is no contract. We don't have individual contracts. Everyone else is an at-will employee. And so there's no increase at any point unless it comes through this table.
I just wanted to ask a question. Are there some departments that are non-union that will have trouble making their budget? To be fair, some departments are better at budget producing versus other departments.
So the bulk of our non-union staff are what I would call general levy or general fund employees. So one-on-one. So we're not generating any revenue.
So
We're
are
not
they,
revenue generating department. We're an expense management department.
are those departments have less of an opportunity to have available to meet these?
Not necessarily, because even those that are revenue generating, it's expense management and not revenue production. Because even our utilities, we're only selling what people are using. And technically our goal is to try to encourage people to conserve, which means less revenue for us.
I think the short answer to your answer, Pam, is if you're working in a department and I'm working in a different department, for sure, at the end of the year, there's gonna be money left different in mine than it is in yours.
Correct, and that's what I'm wondering if that impacts those non-union people who then
For sure,
potentially, if this is out there, they never get the opportunity to really reach it.
for sure. It could happen. I don't know how likely, but it could.
Yeah, and you know, an alternate scenario would be where the performance review process doesn't exist, which I can't advocate for. I completely advocate for the existence of the performance review process. It's the single best tool that we have for staff to get direct feedback on how they're doing and for managers to provide feedback to their employees on how they're doing. And it helps in, you know, promotion opportunities and things like that. But if the performance review process, if we didn't have any financial teeth to it, an alternative would be for city council to say, we're just gonna give everybody the same cost of living. Or no cost of living. For non-union staff.
To me, they're two completely separate items, performance review and how you're gonna pay them after their review. So I don't lump the two together in any way, shape, or form. Yes, they should have performance review. Everybody should.
Well, I think this offers, in my opinion, a good matrix, if we're not gonna have a cost of living increase for non-union employees. It offers a great metrics on how to compensate these employees. Dave, I'm gonna be real honest. I mean, it's like a score sheet in golf. I mean, there's no better way to do it than keep a score sheet. And this is what it offers for the employees. And I think it's a good motivational tool.
Yeah, I respect your opinion on that. But if my golf score is better than yours, I'm not getting a percentage pay for playing the round of golf.
Duly noted. So, any other comments?
So the directors that are reviewing the staff, the non-union staff, based on this performance pay, are they trained in a quality evaluation for performance pay? Because I always felt like that, in my past experience, there was that lack of that knowledge and training to really do that evaluation that makes it very valuable to the employee and to the employer based upon this performance pay. Because that is so critical, because it is somewhat subjective. Unless there's some really good criteria, guidelines, have to meet those goals and that criteria.
That's a good comment.
Yep, so we have in the past met with all the managers to walk through specifically what the program is, how they conduct the program. We, Stacey Lawrence and I, went through a few different iterations of this, the program itself this year to simplify and make it more meaningful. And then are able to turn around and explain that to the managers and explain what the implications are of their checking this box versus that box. With the ultimate goal that we want the experience to be meaningful first and foremost, for both the manager and the employee. And secondary to that is then allowing that manager somewhat of a tool to determine who in their department gets what increase contingent to their budget. So we met with the public services managers 2 weeks ago, I think. Stacy and I did, to walk through the process, to walk through the changes in it. And then ultimately, when those are submitted, then they're reviewed by Director Lawrence and by me, and include with an employee manager discussion. And no question, any performance review has a subjective element to it, and we're never going to be able to fully strip that out of there. But one way that we do is by making sure that everyone knows how to do it well, and coaching managers to do it better. If we have a manager who maybe, I don't know, doesn't put as much thought into it or something, that's a coaching opportunity to explain to them, this is why it's important. It's important for your good employees, and it's important for your employees who are struggling. And that's an opportunity for us to mentor that leader on how to, the value of doing a really good job at your performance review. And also by goals. So by goal setting, right, specifically the professional goal, every employee is going to be required to have one professional goal next year. And by including a goal in there that's specific and measurable and attainable and all the smart acronym letters, we can then more objectively paint a picture of one particular area that we want the employee to work on and the employee wants to work on during the year. But you're right, there is a subjectivity to a performance review that I've experienced in a couple different times in my past life. And some managers who do it really well can make a subjective review really meaningful. Others, subjectivity bleeds in too much and it becomes meaningless, or, but we do have, again, more than one layer of review before these are made final, to try to make sure that we are being consistent in how these are handed out. Understanding that, I know what you're going to say, Councilmember Schomburg. I shouldn't say I know what you're going to say, but that even my review of it is subjective, right? Because even if I review someone else's.
Completely.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I'm very appreciative of the adjustments that you've made, and philosophically, I'm just not gonna hit that. That's fair.
Just one more question. How many managers are over those 19 people that would be under this performance pay?
So all the non-union staff are under this.
I understand the staff, but how many managers or evaluators are involved in those 19? Does somebody have 10 people that they have to evaluate pay performance? Do some people have 4? Do some people have 1? The challenge is when you have a larger number to really make it a good evaluation.
Yes, so within the general fund, I would say there's no manager who has more than 5 employees, more than 5 full-time employees. The performance reviews become more challenging with the really large departments. And so currently, for example, we don't do performance reviews for our part-time employees. But we do for all of our full-time staff. And so even for the police department, when they have, 6 full-time officers, 6 is a challenge. So the goal would be to keep it at 5 or fewer for all of our managers and evaluations.
Fair enough. Anybody else? Otherwise, we will move on to the recommendation by the staff is to approve the amended performance pay policy as described. Any other, at this time, any other comments before we do? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilmember Croven. I will second it. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
2 nays. Was that you, Mr. Sullivan? Okay. And also Councilmember Svanberg. The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8F. Before we move on to item 8F, this is a kind of a long meeting. Does anybody want to take a break or should we keep forging through? Keep on moving. Okay. This is our 2022-052, the 2023 governmental and building department fee schedule. Mr. Rowe, you want to review that with us?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This resolution, just as resolutions every past year, by passage of resolution of this specific resolution, council approves the 2023 governmental fee schedule and building department fee schedules. And these fee schedules are for fees that the city sets for most of the services the city provides. That's not only services, but it's permits, it's applications, it's licenses. It's a really extensive list that covers every department of our city. The building department has historically maintained its own separate fee schedule. It doesn't behave any differently. We still bill out for these for services. The building department is just a little bit more nuanced, and so they have a separate fee schedule. We did make some city council had approved an amendment to the 2020 governmental fee schedule earlier this year. Just because from a management standpoint, the system we use for permits and licenses, we weren't able to adjust our cost plus 15% on the fly as quickly as we wanted to, so we set the prices as static. And we're going to be consistent with that change as much as possible in the 2023 proposed governmental fee schedule. Here, the goal is certainly to generate some revenue, but in a lot of cases, we're simply covering our costs. And in some cases, frankly, we are covering our costs, but it's what we believe the community can bear to pay because they've worked a certain price for a certain period of time. May not always cover our costs, but the goal is to across the board cover costs in our departments. And by doing that, it does generate some revenue to offset levy impact. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions, concerns? There's an extensive list in your packet as far as those fee schedules. If nobody has any questions or concerns, we will then entertain a motion to approve our 2022-052 adopting the 2023 government and building department fee schedules. Anybody?
So
Thank you, Mr. Schluter. Second. Seconded by Councilmember Huntington. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8G, the second final reading of ordinance 596, amending the composition of planning commission. Mr. Roby, you want to review that again with us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The last meeting, November 28th, 2022, City Council waived the first reading of this ordinance, which would amend the composition of the Planning Commission. As I mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission did attempt to hold a meeting last week, at which time it was planned to discuss this with the current Planning Commission members, explain the council process, explain the staff recommendation regarding ordinance 596. Planning Commission was unable to maintain a quorum at the last meeting. And as such, it was just a general discussion around the future of the Planning Commission with some great ideas, concepts that were brought forward, recommendations for staff as well as for the Planning Commission members themselves as they move forward. So first reading was waived. The last meeting, the recommendation tonight is to either conduct or waive the second reading of ordinance 596. upon the success of that, the completion of the second and final reading, the ordinance will be published and recorded and effectively change the composition of the planning commission.
Anybody with any questions, comments?
Joe, when will this take effect? Then once it's published?
January 1st, 2023.
Okay, I apologize.
No, you're fine.
Thank you.
We'll publish it, we would publish it shortly after, as soon as we can after tonight and make sure we're on track for that. But effectively, I think the council's purposes, when it comes to appointing boards and commissions in January, it would be in effect at that time.
With that said, I will entertain a motion to conduct or waive the second and final reading of ordinance 596, amending the composition of the planning commission. Again, I've always said in the past, if you want to conduct the reading, you get to read it. So
I agree, I'll make a motion to waive the second reading.
Councilmember Sullivan made a motion to waive,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Swanberg.
I have a quick question.
You want to wait? You want to read it?
No, no.
All right.
But we also have to adopt it.
Oh, I'm sorry, and adopt. Then
Let's get clear what the motion is then.
Correct, yeah, so I would amend my motion to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance.
596.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Councilmember Carter. It's not clear.
Second that amended motion.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8H, consideration of planning commission terms and terminations. Mr. Runge, you want to review that with us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of item H8G, the waiver of the second and final reading and adoption of ordinance 596, City Council is now required to consider the termination of existing planning commission members to make way for the resetting of the planning commission terms starting January 2020. Effectively, we have 6 current members of the planning commission. 4 of them are automatically terminating at the end of 2022. We have 2 terms that will continue through 2023. The request here is to terminate all of them effective at the end of 2022. Technically, we just terminate the 2 members who have terms continued to 2023, but just simplicity's sake, we're terminating everybody. That's the proposal. And all members.
You don't hear that every day.
We're basically recalibrating.
Yes.
That's the corner she's gonna pick up on that. Yes, yes, so we're resetting the terms in accordance with ordinance 596. All the current members of the planning commission have been made aware that this would be the follow-up action should the ordinance be adopted. All of them have been provided opportunities, information on how to reapply for appointment to the planning commission in 2023.
And you do have 2 applicants that will apply to thing.
I think I can share this. We have 2 so far.
Okay, very good. With that said, if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion for the termination of all current planning commission members, terms effective 12/31/22.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington, and seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8I, R 2022-056L, series of 2022B equipment certificate. Mr. Rome, you want to review that one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In the back of the room, you'll see Shannon Sweeney from David Drown Associates, who was here at our last meeting, City Council last meeting in November regarding the 2022A bond issuance and sale for the South 36 project. This item here, R 2022-056, has a tie-in to our previous conversations around capital equipment and capital improvements when it comes to those that we plan to bond for. For 2022 budget year, there were a number of items, purchases including the golf simulator, wastewater treatment plant equipment, and building repairs, electric underground materials, and stormwater management. Some of the similar items that you saw in the 2023 capital budget that when they were approved for the budget for 2022 were planned to be bonded for or borrowed for instead of using cash. The city reached out to David Drown and Associates for assistance in constructing an equipment certificate, a Series 2022B equipment certificate. And Mr. Sweeney and his team recommended that the city utilize the Minnesota Rural Water Mini Loan Program. It's a loan program that is a minimum, a small, medium, and maximum amount depending on the type of the loan. It always falls into that immediate loan category. It's under $1 million or $2 million. So for all of these purchases, most of which have already been made in accordance with the budget, we're just going to pay for them through equipment certificate. Total financing is proposed at $779,000. What this rural water program does allow for is partnership with local banks. Cornerstone State Bank had been approached along with First Farmers for the 2022A. Ultimately, did not pursue that bond issuance any further. Cornerstone State Bank expressed interest in this equipment certificate and offered a 9-year term at a fixed interest rate of 3.85% for this 2022B equipment certificate. The certificates are callable anytime after February 1st, 2028, which means that's the time we can start prepaying them if we wish. Debt service is planned to come from community center revenue, which would be specifically for the golf simulator itself. And then water, stormwater, wastewater, and electric revenues funding their shares of the purchases. And then should the resolution of the council tonight pass, closing would be targeted for December 29th, 2022. Take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Or from me or for Mr. Sweeney.
And Mr. Sweeney, you've waited so patiently all night. And if you have anything to share, you're welcome to. You're here to answer any questions. So thank you for coming. Anybody? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution R 2022-056 awarding the sale of a $771,000 general obligation equipment certificate series 2022B to Cornerstone State Bank local.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg. Seconded by Councilmember Cronin. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Not all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8J, that would be the adoption of Highway 169 abatement program joint powers agreement. Mr. Roby, you want to review this with us? It's been a hot topic all fall, so.
This is the agenda item the city's been waiting for since 2006. Not to be flippant about it, but I'm very excited that this is in front of council. I'm thrilled to pass this along. The county is eagerly anticipating the city's conversation around this tonight. So yes, we have had, the city council's had a number of conversations around the Highway 169 abatement program over the last several months. And I would argue over the last couple of years, when the conversations first started around whether the city was funding its portion, to what degree the city should be funding the abatement program. Verification that the county was in fact funding their portion. Leading up to the last several months, we've had conversations with the county administrator and one of our county commissioners. And since that meeting in late October, the Administrator Martin and I have exchanged a number of emails with some draft language on the joint powers agreement. So when Sueur County passed their resolution establishing the abatement fund back in 2006, there was some language in there that was pretty specific to the abatement program from the county standpoint being contingent upon the establishment of a joint powers agreement. What that joint powers agreement was going to contain, we don't know specifically. what County Administrator Martin and I have been sharing with one another is what we suspect was likely planned to be included in an agreement, which is how the funds should be dispersed once they've been raised, in what manner they should be dispersed, who controls the disbursement of those funds, or at least the projects for which those funds could be dispersed, and ultimately the timing of by when those dollars should be spent. So it's included in council's packet. We have some language on a joint powers agreement, which includes the establishment of a joint powers committee. And this language has been reviewed both by myself, the city's legal counsel, County Administrator Martin, County Commissioner King, and the Sueur County's legal counsel. Both parties feel very comfortable with it right now from an administrative level. And so the task tonight is for me to bring this to City Council with a recommendation that the city agree to enter into this joint powers agreement with Sueur County. Should the City Council tonight pass this resolution, I would pass it along to the County Board of Commissioners, who would then consider it for similar adoption on their end. Take any questions.
Anybody? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution R 2022-055, agreeing to the enter into the joint powers agreement with Sueur County regarding the Sueur Highway 169 Hilltop Property Tax Abatement Program.
So moved, with my thanks for Mr. Roby getting that done.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Schleter. Any other comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Finally, item 8K, which is approval of payment application number 11, South Main Street reconnection. Mr. Roby, please review that with us if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is an item that normally would appear on the consent agenda. However, it was a late addition, and because we allow council at least 2 days before the meeting to review items that are on the consent agenda, we added this item late, and so it went on the regular agenda. Member companies who are the general contractor who handled the South Main Street connection between Ferry Street and Bridge Street over the last year or so, has completed all the material work with the South Main Street connection, Festival Street, where the 100 block of South Main is under. So all the work is done. This payment application is for the payment of that work. There will still be a request for the retainage, as we are going to have Pembroke come back in the spring and turn the irrigation system on, charge it, make sure everything is running appropriately with the irrigation system. And also all the plantings that were done on the 100 block of South Main were guaranteed for a year. And so they'll come back and make sure that everything is come back to life, I guess, late spring, early summer, and replant if necessary. There were some concerns from the public early on about some trees that didn't seem to be taking, or plants that didn't seem to be coming along. Those were guaranteed by the contractor. So once that punch list is finished, irrigation's on, plantings have been replaced if necessary, everything's been signed off by the city engineer, then they'll request one final payment and the council acceptance of the work. I would anticipate that in early summer, probably June, maybe July. But this is the final application for payment for work that they've done.
Anybody have any comments, concerns? Mr. Roby's explained everything to us. With that, I will entertain any motions to approve payment application number 11 to Pembroke Companies for $46,276.79.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Schleter seconded. Any other comments? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to comments, reports, any.
Mr. Mayor, before we get into that, has there been any determination on our next meeting date?
We were just going to get to that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. That will be in my discussion.
Okay.
Councilmember Huntington, we'll begin with you as always.
I've got nothing.
Thank you. Councilmember Krogman.
Yeah, let me begin by asking Administrator Roby, just so we get clarification as I speak. The appointment of members for commissions, et cetera, will be done on January 3rd. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So everybody understand, that's a Tuesday, just for clarity, because of the holiday schedule. Okay, now I'll give my report. The Airport Commission met last week, this month, and all members, as I recall, every member of that commission term expires. So we need to encourage people to apply for that. But that's the Airport Commission. At that meeting, by the way, it expires on the 31st of December, excuse me. So we have to have a whole new slate of people to be appointed. Our new consultant for the airport is a company called STH. A representative from that company was present to introduce herself and her company to the Airport Commission. And one of the things that she reported was updated information regarding funding for some land that is adjacent to the runway. Okay, and that was, there was some understanding earlier of how that would work, but she updated us on how that might come about, and that will come later, but not yet. Okay, also, one of the concerns was hangar owners at the airport lease the land upon which their hangars rest. They own the hangar, we own the land that they're on. And there were some issues this summer with how construction was done, particularly runways and taxi lanes, not runways, but taxi lanes. And the bottom line is that there was a good discussion about ways to improve communication with the hangar owners. And looks like that's going to work out really well. But the point is that that's something that's really important. They're basically tenants on our land. Let me look at my list real quick. Okay, that's the one for the Airport Commission. Now the Planning Commission we dealt with earlier, essentially all new terms will begin next year. And at that first meeting next year, that commission, when it meets, will form its plan for the year and also begin to put together a report that will come back to you not later than mid-February. Again, it was not a quorum, but a very good discussion. Our new staff person for that is Justin Nielsen, and he is, I can say with great confidence, going to do a great job. And it will be interesting to see if we can get a re-engaged planning commission. I'm convinced we can, but it's really important because that's a critical piece of our governance in this community. Keeping in mind that they're particularly involved with the the comp plan, excuse me, they're the comp plan keepers, so to speak, but also anything that's coming before us from the term of development in the city is going to go through them to you for recommendations. So please, council members and public, let's get some people to apply to be on the planning commission. So we have 5 people who can make meetings and who are, by the way, going to be trained well. One of the plans is to train and inform so that they know what their role is and they feel it's really worth doing. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Moving on to Councilmember Schleter.
I have nothing tonight.
Councilmember Sullivan.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Swanberg.
Just a couple of thank yous. First of all, a huge thank you to everyone who was involved in Christmas in the Valley. I wasn't able to personally attend, but I've heard nothing but positive comments from the group that worked hard to put that together. Unfortunately, the weather didn't fully cooperate, but it sounded like it was a huge success. So thanks to everyone who was involved with that. I also want to thank the folks who showed up to speak tonight. It's easy to just complain down on city streets or bars or restaurants or what have you, but I do appreciate them willing to take the time to come and talk to us and share their stories. It's not always easy, but it's definitely appreciated. And then also I want to thank the council members who were involved in the budgeting process. I know it's painful, I know it's not easy, but I do appreciate the work that you folks, along with Administrator Roby, that you put into that. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg, and thank you for your comments, regarding the people who came and shared their thoughts tonight. That is important for the community to be involved with these tough decisions we got to make. So, moving on to Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, I just want to hit off of what Gabe had said about the citizens that came down and shared their frustrations with how their assessments went with the county doing those assessments. I feel that pain, I feel their pain, and we all do. So I appreciate them taking the time to come down. Reiterate about all the holiday events that have been happening around the city. It's really nice to see that, whether it's the Notables or Cambria's event or the Christmas in the Valley, they're all been great, quality events that have been happening. So it's really nice to see. And again, I credit not only the council for that budget work, but the staff pulling together and recognizing what they needed to do to make that a little bit more palatable. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. We're going to end with myself. As far as our next meeting, Mr. Swanberg, you brought that up. It's a very good question. That is scheduled for the 27th of December. I just want to take a little short survey around the council right now. I am not available for that meeting. I just want to see if we're going to have enough here to meet quorum. Councilmember,
I would be available.
you would be.
Yes.
You are. Councilmember Williams?
That's so, yeah.
Yes.
Huntington?
Mine would be weather.
Yeah.
If I can get up north, weather permitting, I will to see my family, but if the weather's bad, then I'll be available.
Okay. Well, we covered a lot of business tonight, so if we do meet on the 27th, it would be a rather short meeting. Are you available, Mr. Roby?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And then moving on to the January 13th or 3rd meeting, that is basically, what do we call that? Is that a business meeting?
So January 3rd, meeting of council, the city charter dictates that the city council will meet the first business day of the new year to conduct organizational matters. If there is any business that needs to be conducted due to some urgency that cannot wait until January 9th, which is the first scheduled regular meeting of 2023, we would conduct it at the organizational meeting, but the principal focus is organizational matters. Selection of the city depository, official newspaper, mayoral appointments of city council members to various boards and commissions, and council appointments of at-large community members to boards and commissions as well. In addition to any swearing in of new council members would be conducted at that meeting, and the declaration of the proposal of the calendar for 2023's meetings for both city council, planning commission, neighborhood commission, EDA, so forth.
And that evening, we'll also address the new commissions. I have been kind of consumed with the 2023 levy. I'm still kind of tweaking some of the thoughts with our commissions as we move forward. And I will be visiting with a lot of you as we, in the next week or two, to kind of let you know where I'm at with a few of those things. So with that, I would like to end with Councilmember Krogman. I want to personally thank you, along with the rest of this fine council and the staff from the city and the entire community, for the work you put into this council the last, how many years has it been now?
6 for me.
6 years. And it can be challenging at times, and it's very time consuming. It's quite a commitment, but what it takes is a lot of passion for the city to do this. And you have it. You have it, and you're going to carry it on through a lot of your work in the commissions that we hope to see you in as we move forward. We're going to, and as we move forward, I'm going to kind of lean on you with a lot of those commissions. But I want to thank you personally for being my wingman this last couple of years. You've been a tremendous asset to me, and I want to thank you. And I want to present you a certificate for your work, and I'm going to stand up and I do this. So thank you. So with that said, Mr. Ruby, you have anything else you want to close with?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for your attention tonight. I know it was a long meeting, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councilmember Schleter, followed by Councilmember Williams.
Aye.